Hello, my name is Gillian Howell and I'm a Dean's Research Fellow at the University of Melbourne. My research concerns the relationships between music making and peace building, particularly in places that are in the aftermath of war, protracted violent conflict, or in long-standing situations of intergroup animosity or mistrust. In lots of ways, community music practices could be seen as having strong alignment with peace building. Community music activities are commonly enacted within ethical frameworks espousing inclusivity, non-dominance, empowerment, social justice, and participation. And many participants and researchers talk about the feelings of enhanced social connection and relationship that can be the outcomes of community music participation. Thus, we could surmise that community music offers a suite of practices for building and promoting peace among communities that have been divided by conflict. But in order to understand this potential, I suggest we first need to recognise that peace exists in many varieties, rather than there being one universal concept of peace. And this raises the question, what kinds of peace can community music help to foster? I first began thinking about the relationships between music and peace when I worked as a researcher on the Sri Lanka-Norway Music Cooperation. And this was a music development program funded by Norway based in Sri Lanka that sought to strengthen and celebrate Sri Lanka's folk and traditional musics and help to revitalise the music sector and strengthen its infrastructure after 30 years of civil war. There was an annual music and dance festival and many workshops and all sorts of regional activities, all built around strengthening music practices and strengthening infrastructure. And the music cooperation also facilitated music collaborations between musicians from the different ethnic groups that the war had divided. And because of this, the music cooperation also had peace building and reconciliation goals. I spent several months embedded within the program in Sri Lanka, speaking with different stakeholders and participants and asking them about their understanding of the peace building goals. And one of the things that struck me was the way that everyone seemed to have a different idea of the location and the recipients of the peace. Was the peace being built among the collaborating musicians, hearing and sharing each other's music and instruments in person for the first time in decades? Was it a piece for the audience to be reminded of all that is shared among Sri Lanka's many peoples? Or was it a piece for what one advisory board member called the man in the street? Could these music activities somehow influence the wider public conversation? And this then raised a further question about how this peace goal within the music cooperation might be interacting with the wider political dynamics in this country where war had ended with a definitive victory for one side and therefore an imposed peace for those on the opposing side. The different ways that the stakeholders had imagined peace being built through music did two things for me. They reminded me of the way that musical communication and social impact can reverberate well beyond the site of musical action, and so the peace experience might also reverberate in similar ways. And they prompted me to approach questions about music and peace building from multiple perspectives and through a critical lens. To understand how and what music making might be contributing to peace, we needed to consider whose peace, peace where and for whom, peace on whose terms, and what kind of peace might be possible in this place and time. And this is what I've been working on over the last couple of years. And what I want to share briefly today is what I suggest are 4 key variables in music making practices that combine in different ways to create different kinds of peace. The first of these I call encounter. And the encounter refers to the extent to which the music activities create the possibility of encountering the other. And is it an interpersonal encounter or an encounter through musical materials? Both are possible. The second variable is conflict engagement. And this refers to the extent to which the music activities engage with the politics underpinning the social divisions or other conflict narratives that have prompted the need for this peace-building work in the first place. Are the wider conflict narratives being navigated within the musical space, or are they set aside in order to maintain the musical space as a conflict-free space? The third variable is what I call sociality, and this refers to the extent to which the music activities create the possibility of independent social relationships and emotional ties among the participants. And the fourth one is audience projection. the extent to which the music activities are projecting the piece message of the work to an external audience. When we start to look at how these 4 variables are enacted in combination in the different music activities, then we get a picture of the different kinds of piece that become possible. And these are the 6 that I've identified. And in the time that I've got today, I'm going to give examples of 3 of the most prevalent in community music. And the first of these is everyday piece. Everyday piece is a type of piece that is very well theorized in peace and conflict studies. It refers to a grassroots type of piece that manifests in settings where there are entrenched social divisions, but also where space has to be shared. It's the kind of piece you might find, for example, in a marketplace. And it's built upon the mutual tacit adoption of behaviours that all seek to keep that wider political conflict at a distance. This is not a piece that is seeking to transform or resolve the wider conflict, but that seeks to ensure a space where people can get respite from it and keep attention on shared interests and concerns. Next, a very prevalent form of music-based peace building is fostering justice-seeking peace. And justice-seeking peace is musical action that is calling for change. It names the drivers of conflict, it documents injustices, often through its lyrics, and it often includes a call to action. The musical participants might be those who are living with injustice and demanding its address, but it can also include others who are not directly affected by that same injustice, but are acting in solidarity with those who are justice-seeking. So here, the desired piece is located widely, and so the variable of audience projection of the piece message and the mobilizing intent of the music is a defining variable. And the third piece of the 6 is what I call imagined peace. And imagined peace is a peace to come. It's a possible peace. It doesn't yet exist. It's an idea that motivates us to act in certain ways and to feel also inspired and hopeful about the change that might be possible, and that we can contribute our actions towards realizing and bringing into existence. The message of peace in the music might be in the musical lyrics, as in John Lennon's Imagine, but it isn't always. Composers, particularly in the Western classical tradition, might make peace offerings, and they have done this for centuries, attaching a peaceful intention to their musical sounds. However, we need to also remember that listeners are the primary agents determining how a message of peace in music is received, and that plenty of music can have a peaceful message for listeners that is beyond what the composer may have intended, because the peace fantasies, as they might be called, will always be based on the associations that the music conjures for the listener. Interestingly, these 4 variables are not musical variables. They could be applied to many other kinds of activity and kinds of participation as well. And thus far, I'm finding that they have very strong salience in helping to differentiate between different music-based peace-building projects and activities and the outcomes that we might associate with those. And they're providing tools for thinking about how music might build peace and what kinds of peace might be built. Pieces by pieces, as the title of this paper terms it. This study is currently under review with Peace Building Journal, and I welcome your questions and any thoughts that this presentation triggers. Thanks so much.